The umbrella man. I'm going to tell you about a funny thing that happened to my mother and me yesterday evening. I'm 12 years old and I'm a girl. My mother is 34, but I am nearly as tall as her already. Yesterday afternoon, my mother took me up to London to see the dentist. He found one hole. It was in a back tooth and he filled it without hurting me too much. After that, we went to a cafe. I had a banana split and my mother had a cup of coffee. By the time we got up to leave, it was about 6 o'clock. When we came out of the cafe, it had started to rain. We must get a taxi, my mother said. We were wearing ordinary hats and coats, and it was raining quite hard. Why don't we go back into the cafe and wait for it to stop, I said. I wanted another of those banana splits. They were gorgeous. It isn't going to stop, my mother said. We must get home. We stood on the pavement in the rain looking for a taxi. Lots of them came, but they all had passengers inside them. I wish we had a car with a chauffeur, my mother said. Just then, a man came up to us. He was a small man and he was pretty old, probably 70 or more. He raised his hat politely and said to my mother, "Excuse me, I do hope you will excuse me." He had a fine white mustache and bushy white eyebrows and a wrinkly pink face. He was sheltering under an umbrella, which he held over his head. "Yes," my mother said, very cool and distant. "I wonder if I could ask a small favor of you," he said. "It is only a very small favor." I saw my mother looking at him suspiciously. She is suspicious. I'm just going to turn page. She is a suspicious person, my mother. She is especially suspicious of two things: strange men and boiled eggs. When she cuts the top off a boiled egg, she pokes around inside it with her spoon as though expecting to find a mouse or something. With strange men, she has a golden rule which says, the nicer the man seems to be, the more suspicious you must become. This little old man was particularly nice. He was polite, he was well spoken, he was well dressed. He was a real gentleman. The reason I knew he was a real gentleman was because of his shoes. You can always spot a gentleman by the shoes he wears, was another one of my mother's favorite sayings. This man had beautiful brown shoes. The truth of the matter is, the little man was saying, "I've got myself into a bit of a scrape. I need some help." "Not much, I assure you. It's almost nothing, in fact, but I do need it. You see, madam, old people like me often become terribly forgetful." My mother's chin was up and she was staring down at him along the full length of her nose. It was a fearsome thing, this frosty-nosed stare of my mother's. Most people go to pieces completely when she gives it to them. I once saw my own headmistress begin to stammer and simper like an idiot when my mother gave her the really foul frosty-noser. But the little man on the pavement with the umbrella over his head didn't bat an eyelid. He gave a gentleman's smile and said, "I beg you to believe, madam, that I am not in the habit of stopping ladies in the street and telling them my troubles." "Well, I should hope not," my mother said. I felt quite embarrassed by my mother's sharpness. I wanted to say to her, "Oh, Mummy, for heaven's sake, he's a very old man, and he's sweet and polite, and he's in some sort of trouble, so don't be so beastly to him." But I didn't say anything. The little man shifted his umbrella from one hand to the other. "I've never forgotten it before," he said. "You've never forgotten what?" my mother asked sternly. "My wallet," he said. "I must have left it in my other jacket. Isn't that the silliest thing to do?" "Are you asking me to give you money?" my mother said. "Oh, good gracious me, no," he cried. "Heaven forbid I should ever do that." "Then what are you asking?" my mother said. do hurry up. We're getting soaked here to the skin." "I know you are," he said, "and that's why I'm offering you this umbrella of mine to protect you and to keep forever, if only..." "If only what?" my mother said. "If only you would give me in return £1 of my tax fare just to get me home. £1 for my tax fare, just to get me home." My mother was still suspicious. "If you had no money in the first place," she said, "then how did you get here?" "I walked," he answered. "Every day I go for a lovely long walk, and then I summon a taxi to take me home. I do it every day of the year." "Why don't you walk home now?" my mother asked. "Oh, I wish I could," he said. "I do wish I could, but I don't think I could manage it on these silly old legs of mine. I've gone too far already." My mother stood there chewing on her lower lip. She was beginning to melt a bit, I could see that, and the idea of getting an umbrella to shelter under must have tempted her a good deal. "Well, it's a lovely umbrella," the little man said. "So I've noticed," said my mother. "And it's silk," he said. "I can see that." "Then why don't you take it, madam?" he said. "It cost me over £20, I promise you. But that's no importance so long as I can get home and rest these old legs of mine." I saw my mother's hand feeling for the clasp of her purse. She saw me watching her. I was giving her one of my own frosty-nosed looks this time, and she knew exactly what I was telling her. "Now listen, Mummy," I was telling her. "You simply mustn't take advantage of a tired old man this way. It's a rotten thing to do." My mother paused and looked back at me. Then she said to the little man, "I'm just going to switch." Then she said to the little man, "I don't think it's quite right that I should take an umbrella from you worth £20. I think I'd better just give you a taxi fare and be done with it." "Oh, no, no, no," he cried. "It's out of the question. I wouldn't dream of it. Not in a million years. I would never accept money from you like that. Take the umbrella, dear lady, and keep the rain off your shoulders." My mother gave me a triumphant sideways look. "There you are," she was telling me. "You're wrong. He wants me to have it." She fished into her purse and took out a £1 note. She held it out to the little man. He took it and handed her the umbrella. He pocketed the £1, raised his hat, gave a quick bow from the waist, and said, "Thank you, ma'am, thank you." Then he was gone. "Come under here and keep dry, darling," my mother said. "Aren't we lucky? I've never had a silk umbrella before. I couldn't afford it." "Where were you so horrid to him in the beginning?" I asked. "I wanted to satisfy myself and that he wasn't a trickster," my mother said. "And I did. He was a gentleman. I'm very pleased I was able to help him." "Yes, Mummy?" I asked. "A real gentleman," she went on. "Wealthy too. Otherwise he wouldn't have had a silk umbrella. I shouldn't be surprised if he's a title person, Sir Harry Goldsworthy or something like that." "Yes, Mummy." "This will be a good lesson to you," she went on. "Never rush things. Always take your time when you're summing someone up. Then you'll never make mistakes." "There he goes," I said. "Look." "Where?" "Over there. He's crossing the street." "Goodness, Mummy, what a hurry he's in." We watched the little man as he dodged nimbly in and out of the traffic. Then he reached the other side of the street and he turned left, walking very fast.